So next up, NASA wants to use Charisma University.
Very cool. Very exciting. Did you want me to email them, by the way?
Yes.
Because I sent you the answers.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Podcast number 20. Here we go.
What up? We'll do a quick one.
This is 20, man. We finally made it.
We did it.
I read a comment that said that it was one comment, but it said that new listeners had a hard time jumping in, or a new listener had a hard time. So make sure to take lots of time to describe every topic we talk about in a way that is accessible. Okay?
Really? Because we just refer back. We just
I think we're like, last week I also found that I don't. This is terrible. I have a thought and I think it fully in my brain and I stop speaking it halfway through. So I watch back some of our podcasts and I'm mid giving an example of what I'm talking about and then I'm on to the next thought.
Nice.
It is embarrassing. I'm going
Nice.
to do an anti-charisma breakdown on myself.
It's all right.
Yeah.
I saw one comment that said apparently I talk over you, so I'm going to work on that this week.
I thought I talked over you.
Yeah, so did I. I saw the comment. I was like, are we sure that you know which one is Ben?
I am going to go with the objective third party on this one.
Yeah, I guess so.
So I wanted to connect it back to last week. And for all those who are new, who may be new, the context was we were talking about what a man is.
Yep.
And we were talking about how all the things that a man in our society is encouraged to be, which is in some cases selfless, financially providing, protects the people around him, are not all of them, but many of them are to encourage him to behave in pro-social ways that are good for society, but not necessarily best for him, like being the one who takes the baseball bat downstairs when there's an intruder who comes in.
Yeah.
Not best for him. That's what works well for people at large.
Yep.
Join the army, fight for the country, all this kind of stuff. And I watched an interview that I thought was fascinating. So Daniel Cormier just lost to Stipe Miocic.
Yep.
He's
a UFC fighter.
The UFC fighter. Here we go. Very good. Yeah. Had a plan to go speak at Texas A&M 2 days later. Not only that did he just have this devastating loss, but his father, who has since died, was on death's door. Was and apparently died within weeks of this thing, and they did not know when he would go. And he went to Texas A&M to give the speech, and Ariel Helwani, who was interviewing him, asked him, why did you do this so soon after the defeat and with all this going on? And he said, boys do what they want, men do what they're supposed to. And that, he said he really liked that. That was a quote that the Texas A&M football coach said to his players. And my head exploded in that moment. Because I'm glad it didn't turn out this way, but Daniel was able to get back, spend some time with his dad before he had died. But God forbid, what if his father had died while he was doing what he was supposed to do? And worse, Texas A&M football coach, who is probably the highest paid person at Texas A&M, is telling a bunch of unpaid athletes who are risking life and limb in order to make him and his college money that men do what they're supposed to. Meanwhile, I bet you he comes back and negotiates for whatever best salary he could possibly make and would drop Texas A&M in a heartbeat if the Longhorns called him up and said, we want to pay you more money to come here.
Yeah, of course.
And I was like, this is what a quintessential way to control people. Yeah. Men do what they're supposed to. And then they all pat each other on the back, run out there and get concussions for the glory of Texas A&M.
Yeah.
I was just like, and Daniel Cormier is out there, responding to it.
And luckily, but potentially missing out on spending his last moments with his father, which would have haunted him forever.
Yeah.
If he had passed away while he was at Texas A&M.
After that, I was like, this is it. Yes. Yeah. I don't know what else to say other than we use the term, you're a boy, you're a man, in order to control people.
Sure.
And
well, supposed to do is funny too, because according to whom?
Your coach. Your coach tells you what you're supposed to do. So that was just such a clear and then I thought about it more. I was like, the coach of Texas A&M, he's getting paid so much money to be there. All of his players are literal volunteers who are there, almost none of whom will ever get a sniff at the NFL.
Sure.
This is it for them.
What about the glory though?
To make the NCAA a ton of money, it's you do what you're supposed to do. A good man does what he's supposed to do. So,
which is get me wins, boys.
And
get me wins.
To wrap up our thought from last week, whenever someone tells you this is what a man does, or even this is what a woman does, just be aware that they are very likely trying to control you.
Sure.
Exactly.
I actually see that a lot in dating. If there's a guy who a woman likes and they're hooking up, but the guy doesn't want to date her exclusively, there'll be labels like you're immature in an attempt to kind of like, maybe if I just needle you enough, you'll do what I want you to do.
I want a real man.
Yeah.
What is a real man?
Who can commit?
Yeah.
I don't want someone immature who's going to also date other people.
Yeah. No, and the idea behind that being, listen, it's fine to want someone who commits. It's fine to someone who doesn't date other people. But how does that have any bearing on his manhood?
You just get to use a pejorative term, and then hopefully they feel badly enough to do what you want them to do.
Exactly. And I'm sure it goes both ways. If we were women, I'm sure we'd have plenty of examples of people putting us in this box. This is what a woman should do. This is what a woman should do. Again, just a mechanism of control. So don't buy it. You could be whatever you want to be. The next thing that I had written down here, so I was watching a documentary on Steve Jobs.
Okay.
And he was in the movie too, but I didn't really pick up on it. The Steve Jobs movie with Michael Fassbender. Did you ever see that?
No.
So I didn't know this. He's got a reputation for being a very difficult boss, but he also denied that he ever had a daughter for a long time. Not always, but for the first 7 years of her life, he had a high school sweetheart. He had a daughter with her. Mm-hmm. He denied that it was his for 7 years, was like barely involved in her life. Then she came and lived with him for a period of time. At one point, it made headlines because he would not pay child support for her. And when the headline, came out, they interviewed him and they said, "Why won't you pay?" He said, "I had my guys do an algorithmic test on the DNA test that they administered to me, and 28% of America could be her father." Like it was just, and could be in turns fatherly, and then depending on how things were going at work, by her own account, disown her emotionally and verbally.
Weird.
And I also, and I know this one is nobody's gonna like it, but I was looking up other great men with other sides to them. Martin Luther King Jr. cheated on his wife all the time. Mm-hmm. And I want to say all the time, but friends and people close to him, the FBI says 40 plus, but even friends close to him say with 10 to 12 other women. And they tapped his phones, and so they have all of this. This won't be unsealed for everybody to see until like 2029. But the record is fairly clear, at least amongst people around him, that this was happening. JFK.
Oh, yeah. Dude, that one's... I don't think anyone debates that one. JFK...
Well, it's just incredible. Bill Clinton did what he did, and I'm not defending it, but JFK is one of those revered presidents.
Oh, yeah. JFK is just lucky that he grew up in a different era than Bill Clinton.
Who cheated on his wife 3 times a day, sometimes with underage women.
Yeah.
And...
No, JFK did... He's good for him that he wasn't around when cell phones were around.
So... and also when the culture hadn't gotten there, because I just don't think people cared that this was happening in some way.
No, people knew. Marilyn Monroe sang him a song.
Yeah. So I didn't know what to make of it other than... What do you do? And we talked about Michael Jackson, which may or may not be true, the allegations against him. But what do you do with these icons, these people who in one area of their life are incredible, in some ways heroic, and in some other facet of their life have completely fallen down on the job morally?
You throw the nuance away and you idolize them.
Or demonize them.
Seems pretty obvious.
You chuck the nuance.
Society has given us this answer.
Black or white.
Achieve enough, and all of your sins are forgotten.
Yeah. I don't know what the answer is.
And probably just accept that all humans are nuanced, and no one is pure good and no one is pure evil.
Sure, I think that's the right answer. I also notice in my own life, though, that when I've admired people in my own life that I've aspired to be like them, that it is tough to emulate specific traits from one person and not take the whole package.
Oh, it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible. Like, I love Tony Robbins. I learned a lot from Tony Robbins. His relationship advice at times, I think, is questionable. And I just took all of it. And it led me down a not enjoyable relationship where I was trying so hard to just put his teachings into practice. And it was leading me to be miserable.
Yeah. And what you're going to get, for better or worse, is his... almost in some cases insistence on the positive outlook, which can be good, might not be good.
You're the one who sent me the clip where the husband and wife are talking, and he says it's the husband's job to stand there and take any abuse. He literally says physical, verbal. She's going to be mean to you. She might hit you. She might spit on you. And that's her way of showing you that she loves you.
She's testing you.
To which I said, if this is how this woman shows love, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm going to find someone who doesn't show love by hitting me and emotionally abusing me.
Sure. And
Tony's thing is
I'll give him
Forever.
a
Stay
bit
forever.
of, well, not forever. It was within the context of that intervention, and for like
No, that was
90
his advice.
days after.
That was his advice
and for the next 90 days, that she was going to test him because he hadn't been there. And I felt similarly to you, which is like,
well, but when I watched that when I watched the exact same thing you sent me. Funny enough, when I was about 24, and internalized all of it, and could not be chased away by bad behavior because of it.
And I'll give context to this because that comment. So Tony Robbins does interventions at his event. This was a couple that had been fighting. The man, according to the woman, had not been emotionally present in the relationship. And now that he was ready to step back up, what Tony is telling him is she's not going to believe you. She's going to test you, which means that she's going to be cruel. She might swing at you on occasion. She's going to spit venom at you. But that's all a test to make sure that you're real.
Yeah, and I'm watching this at 24 thinking Tony is a god.
Writing notes.
Okay, great. When someone treats you poorly, it's a test.
Yeah.
And a real man is strong enough to take it.
Yeah.
And you can just have infinite tolerance because you're a man. And I was like, cool, I can do that.
Yeah. I got it.
I
Tony,
did it.
The abuse keeps coming. Things are going very well.
I'm passing every test.
My man,
I have not dumped her yet,
Yeah.
despite the abuse.
Exactly. So I think that as relates to these men, not that you have to copy everything, but it's tough. It's tough to emulate parts of a person and not get everything. Plus, when you're a moral leader in some ways, and then you fall down on other ways, you have to ask, okay, well, this system of morality clearly isn't working.
Well, it's interesting. People seem to struggle to follow people that are nuanced, if that makes sense. Like like if you consider yourself a Trump supporter, you struggle to say he also does a lot of things poorly. And if you consider yourself a Trump hater, you struggle to go, at the same time, though, compared to Obama, XYZ, XYZ.
I like one policy, two policies.
And being like, net, I prefer Obama. Net, I prefer Trump. But here's what they do well and here's what they do poorly. Yeah. And weirdly enough, that's something a lot of people seem to struggle with. It's like once you throw your hat behind someone, no information will get you to switch, and no information will get you to admit they're bad in a certain area. And not for everyone, but I see it a lot. I see people coming to the defense of behavior I know they don't actually believe in, because they've already gone on record supporting the person.
Sure.
And they struggle to go, I was wrong, or I still support the person, but this is bad.
Yeah. And we've talked about how your early relationships with your mom and your dad can define what you think of masculinity and femininity. But I also think, because I read a book that pointed in this direction, one of the tendencies of children is either to idolize or demonize their parents. And the hardest thing to do is accept the humanity of your parents, that the grayness of them, and the fact that they are people just like the ones like you and the ones that you see who are regularly making mistakes but elevating themselves above.
That's what I struggle with the most, actually.
Yeah.
My friends I can do, famous people these days I can do. My parents are still the ones that I struggle to have a nuanced view of.
To imagine that you could have gone to high school and somebody did go to high school with them.
Yeah.
And they were like someone at that school at one point.
And had virtues and vices and flaws.
And what they say is that in addressing your relationships to your family, you then learn to apply the same sort of nuance to people outside of your family. So the degree to which you'll be able to approach the world in this understanding that there's humans and it's gray, all this kind of stuff, is related to your ability to look at your own family and go, mom wasn't perfect, nor was she a devil. Dad wasn't perfect, nor was he a devil. These were people with both. And I can hold that. That's as big as that is. I can't just put a label on them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm actually at like an A level for everybody but my parents. Tony Robbins, I get it. MLK, I get it.
Yeah.
Trump, I get it. I actually feel like politically I'm much more willing to accept the nuance. But yeah, mom and dad
no
can do no wrong.
Saints.
Yeah.
They didn't mistake.
That wasn't a mistake. That was a plan that they had. They didn't tell you or themselves about. Idiot.
Everything turned out perfect.
You fool.
Yeah. No, I suspect, and I don't know, because I do agree with you. I see the same tendency in you, and I think that you are capable of going, these people are, they're both. They're everything. But yeah, and I see the same tendency in you towards idealization. Yeah. I wonder what'll happen. Maybe you'll just get mega mind when you can just completely understand everyone.
That's when my body dissolves and I just become consciousness.
Exactly. You become universal consciousness after you get that. So next up, NASA wants to use Charisma University.
Very cool. Very exciting. Did you want me to email them, by the way?
Yes.
Because I sent you the answers.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. So this is just a number of funny things about our business. So in order to focus, and I think this is incredibly important, on the stuff that we do best, I have had to take the onslaught of emails that I receive, and I have an autoresponder that says, look, I can't answer all the emails. If you have questions about this, send it to this assistant. This, send it to this assistant. So we're like directing emails. But every now and then we get one, if you have questions, they can go here. Every now and then we get one that we don't have a bucket for. And this one was from a government organization that wanted to purchase Curzon University. And they have questions like, is there sales tax because the government doesn't need to pay tax?
Yeah.
Is this hosted in a secure... like all these things.
Is this cloud-based or web-based?
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. The thing is, I put this together when I was 26.
Is the cloud not the web?
Yeah. I don't know the difference.
It's a cloud web.
Yeah.
So there was a bunch of questions like that. And interesting from one, because we just left them NASA hanging for 2.5 weeks at this point.
We're sorry.
But you know what? I am sorry, but this is part of getting important stuff done, is letting these sorts of things. Unfortunately, I don't like that it's the case, but I can either answer every email promptly or make good videos and grow the business. And I have to pick that one. But the other thing that I thought was interesting, because we've talked a lot about prestige, is that I saw that and my heart went aflutter for a minute. And I was like, wait. These are just people.
Yeah, same as like 4,000 people have gone through it.
Yeah.
If NASA goes through it, it's 4,002, let's say. But they're actually no different as people, but they are rocket scientists.
And it wasn't all of NASA. It was this one person in the thing, and they were purchasing through the government, and I think probably would have shared it with some colleagues.
Yeah, I think it's a training program for a division.
Yes.
Probably 5 people, maybe.
Yeah, and people get value out of this all the time.
Sure.
Well, I would like them to. I just have to keep in mind that they're not special. They're humans, and I think the degree to which I can recognize and understand that will make me happier in my life.
Yeah.
But I still go, ooh, like.
Well, NASA's a funny thing, because especially for when we were growing up, you grow up as a kid. NASA's just
the coolest.
Incredible.
Yeah.
People would say they want to grow up to be astronauts, and it's one of the few jobs where other parents would be like, that's really hard to do. You could be president before you could be an astronaut.
Yeah.
And also NASA was held in such high regard. Apollo 13 came out when we were kids. So I think that's probably why.
Do you think it still has the same regard for kids that are 13 today?
I don't think so. I mean, one, Elon came in and really
SpaceX
mixed things up.
Yeah.
And two, the government cut its funding at one point, right?
They cut its funding at many points, I think. They don't have a ton of funding at all.
Yeah. So I think the prestige of NASA in the minds of children has probably gone down.
Yeah. Seems like that private SpaceX.
Yeah, Elon came in and just went, hey, look what I can do.
Jeff Bezos is doing it too. Yeah, interesting. This is just a vestige of our...
I went to space camp when I was a kid, dude. That's how much I thought NASA was amazing.
Really?
I spent a summer. I was probably 7 years old or 8 years old. No, maybe 12 years old. But I went away to Florida for like a week and did astronaut stuff.
What is astronaut stuff?
I don't even remember, but you get an astronaut thing and you're in bunks with a bunch of people. It was the first time I'd ever been away from home. And they do zero-G stuff. I don't know how they simulate it because I was a small child. But yeah, I loved it. I was pretty excited about it. Yeah.
I see. I couldn't. Sleeping out when
you're doing simulations. They're telling you this is how piloting a moon drone works, and you're playing this video game. You're sitting in a huge equipment that you couldn't possibly have at home.
But even you were in Florida. Like I couldn't have a sleeple till I was like 16.
Really?
Yeah.
Because of you or because of your parents?
Because of me.
Really?
I tried to call them up 3 of them and be like, I need to come home.
You just got anxious?
Yeah. I didn't
really?
like it. I was a big baby.
Interesting.
I couldn't do that. It also reminded me that I had a science Christmas once. My parents decided.
Oh, yeah.
Long story short, my parents decided that video games weren't good for me, so I was going to have a science Christmas, and they bought me a bunch of beakers, and I got an ant farm and all these things, and every present that I opened, my heart just broke a little bit more. And I had to be tough, so I didn't show them. So 2 days, 3 days go by, and I haven't opened my beakers, and I'm just broken. I think Santa hates me. This is some cruel trick. And then on the third night, my mom came in to put me to bed. She's like, "What's wrong, Char?" I just broke down. I was like, "Santa got me an ant farm." And then 2 days later, I had a Super Nintendo.
Nice. So what did we learn as a child?
Santa just doesn't. No. He needs to be communicated with.
Cry when you're unhappy, and you'll get what you want.
I got out of CCD that way too.
Did you really?
Yeah, man. I ended religion in my family when I was 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
I just screamed and cried when it was time to go to CCD. CCD, you know what CCD is?
Yeah.
It's where you go in the evenings to, I guess, do Bible study or whatever. And I was not having it. And that was the end of CCD.
Wow.
I put up a big stink.
You ended religion in the Altman family. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
So I grew up Jewish, went to Sunday school or whatever it's called, got bar mitzvahed. I believed in the teachings of Judaism until I was about 19. And then you had studied philosophy for a year. It was the summer between freshman and junior year, I think, or maybe Christmas of freshman year. And we were talking about whether or not God exists. And I was like, yeah, obviously he exists. And then we went back and forth. And you were a philosophy major, and I had been learning from a rabbi, right? You just you just crushed me in terms of arguments. Like, you had heard my counter arguments. No one had ever told me there wasn't a God. So it was like a baby fighting an adult. So I get totally dismantled. I'm kind of like, whoa. But I was open-minded enough to go, okay, I guess I'm agnostic now because I don't know the arguments to counter your arguments. So then when my family wanted to go to synagogue for the high holidays, which is like the most important Jewish holidays, I said I didn't want to go because I wasn't sure if I believed in it anymore. And they all went, oh, cool, we're all agnostic. You were the last. The only reason all of us were going was to keep up the charade for you.
This was your 19-year-old Santa.
Yeah. They're like, listen, we literally told Steph she just had to go because if you skipped it, then Ben will think something's weird and he'll maybe rethink his religion. So as soon as I was like, I'm not sure if I believe in this, they're like, cool. None of us have for a while.
It's funny that there's that. And I'm
so
not.
Yeah, you ruined synagogue.
I was way more militant back then. I don't care. I don't think I've even tried. Well, that's not only on rare occasion. I'll for the sake of debate argue these, but I don't care.
I swing back. I still believe there's no atheists in foxholes. Things get
100%
dire.
Agree.
I start to pray.
Oh yeah.
That's why I say agnostic and not atheist. Because as much as my front brain can argue stuff,
yeah,
when shit hits the fan, I'm in bed like, God, please.
God, I know you're out there. That was all just
I'm sorry for saying I was agnostic.
And I wasn't sure how I'd handle it until ayahuasca. And then I'm positive that I completely was just like, I'll do anything. Yeah. I'll pray to whoever.
Yeah. No atheists in foxholes, man.
Yeah. So, and I don't even, at least the psychedelic foxhole, certainly I was not an atheist in that moment. And so, yeah, I'm way less militant about it because it's just a big hypocrite.
Yeah.
I get it. I get the desire to be helped when you are helpless.
Sure.
And when you're on psychedelics, there's also a sense that, like, what do I know? I could be dead wrong. All of those logical arguments don't seem to really
I feel.
hold weight here.
Could this be a simulation? Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Could there be a God? Sure. Absolutely.
Outside
Could this be the natural reality prime and it was created by science? Sure. So, are these mutually exclusive? I don't even know.
Yeah.
We've just gone above and beyond my human brain at this point.
With regards to religion, where I do feel comfortable being an atheist is with the specific claims made.
Book-related religion.
What you would define as a Catholic, which has you have to believe that the Eucharist is the body of Christ, right? There's specific things that sign you up to be in any of these particular religions.
Sure.
And when you lay them out like that, I feel very comfortable being an atheist with regard to those particular set of
certain specific doctrines.
Yeah.
So if you think these sentences are true,
if you think
I'll argue the counter.
That Poseidon is ruler of the seas, or that
I always talk to Poseidon when I'm surfing. I always talk to Poseidon.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. But that's where I feel very comfortable being an atheist. But with the sense of, do you have a complete grasp of it? Are we in a dead materialistic universe that had nothing beyond it? I think, I go agnostic on that question. And that's why I only argue with people that have concrete beliefs. And the other thing, we've talked about this in our lives, but it's worth bringing up on the podcast. You've dated very religious people in the past. I've dated people who say they're very religious. The interesting thing about what people believe and how they behave is that they behave like they don't believe.
Yeah.
So
our behaviors line up identically, despite the fact that, except for they go to church on Sundays.
And I think Jordan Peterson, I didn't understand what he was arguing when he was arguing for God, but he said, look, if you ask me what I say I believe, okay, I could say anything, but look at my behaviors, and that's going to give you a much more clear indication of what I believe. And so you dated someone who insisted that they were a Catholic, and then they had premarital sex with you.
Yep.
Over and over and over again for years. And then you go, wait a second. According to the thing that you sign up for, you are going to suffer in hellfire for eternity in order to get your jollies. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if you really believe what you say you believe, or if that's just a convenient label to slap on yourself. So I do think that referring to people's actions is a much stronger way to determine their beliefs.
Sure.
So, and I've noticed that about people that have, at least in our world, who have claimed religiosity. did you read? You've never read the Bible?
Or they have, and they just do the opposite. Sure. Or they do. That's the thing. I guess you either believe this, in which case this is totally not worth going to hell for eternity for, or you don't believe it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So for me, if I believed it, I would not have premarital sex. I can be celibate if I was risking
your discipline
an eternity of hellfire. You know?
Yeah.
Or just say I don't think that people go to hell for that. But then you have to say that the book isn't 100% doctrine. At which point, how do we know what is doctrine?
Yes. And then you go, okay, so now you're the cafeteria version of I like this, I don't like this, and then you go, well,
which is fine for your own life. I actually have no problem with that.
Sure.
You're totally fine for your own life, but you do lose the ability to tell other people that they should live a certain way because you're making all of the decisions based on how you feel, not based on this thing, this sacred thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's fine. You want to be a cafeteria Christian or a cafeteria Jew and just pick the things that work with you? God bless.
Sure.
But you can't tell other people to live by your cafeteria values.
Yeah. At the most, you tell them to live by their cafeteria values.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is you read this big, long book, you pick the 7 passages that you like.
Yeah.
And
ignore
then
the ones that are inconvenient to you.
Ignore the ones that don't feel right, and we'll leave it at that. So I don't think that it's right, and I don't support it, but there is a degree of I have to respect the commitment to those sects of every religion who read the whole book and try their best, even in 2019, to apply the book as it's written.
They're internally consistent at the expense of convenience. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. At least you believe it, because certainly if I believed it, man, that would be the book I read every day. I read a lot of books.
Yeah.
I would just only read that one, because what is this 70, 80, 90 years if I'm lucky?
I'd be trying so hard not to screw up.
Yeah.
I'd be trying so hard. I have a huge list of rules. Okay, what can I eat when?
Yeah.
No shellfish on what days?
Yeah.
Like,
oh no, you'd have your calendar. It'd be a work of art.
Oh yeah.
For you.
I'm not eternity. You know how long that is to be in hell?
Well, the cool thing is that I don't know if this is in the doctrine, but there's that Lent period, and then at least in Christianity, Jesus dies and is resurrected 3 days later. And in many societies, there's 3 days where anything goes.
Yeah.
Because nobody's watching.
Yeah.
And so if you were that type of
those would be an intense 3
days. Those would be a nuts 3 days.
Yeah, that's your Burning Man right there.
It'd be like the Purge.
Yeah.
You'd just be going around. I don't see who did that. No.
I would like to be, and I think Judaism might have a day like it too, but I would like to be in one of those religions where ultimately all your sins are washed away if you just ask for forgiveness.
Isn't that Judaism?
I think it's Judaism and Catholicism, right?
Well, Catholicism, if you confess and do the priest gives you the rosary or whatever it is that you say this many Hail Marys.
Can you only confess on certain days?
No, I'm pretty sure you can go in and confess.
So if you screw up, you're just booking it to the church and praying you don't get in an accident on the way.
You're just hoping for a not accidental anything hanging over my head. But also then, and this was historically, you could just buy an indulgence for a family member. And
oh, really?
Yeah, you could buy him out of purgatory.
That's sick.
It's convenient. Yeah.
That's dope.
Have you seen St. Peter's Basilica? It's really nice.
It makes sense.
It's a lot of people that didn't have to go hang out in purgatory there. So this is slightly related to religion. The book that I'm reading, which is The Righteous Mind, I think it's called, Jonathan Haidt. We've talked about it in the past, but a couple just little factoids that caught my eye. This one related to religion is that there was a guy who did a study of suicide attacks over the last 100 years. And of course, those have taken different forms. They've been bombs. They've been all different kinds of things. And what he found is that those attacks are often more closely related with nationalism than with religiosity.
Okay.
Which means that the way to, if you were just looking at a system, produce a suicide bomber is to put boots on the ground of a foreign entity into someone else's country. It is a response to the homeland being invaded. And it is not a response to drone strikes. It's not a response to like technological. It's a response to...
How do they know that?
Well, I think he's just looking at all of the, okay, there were 30 things here, there were 15 things here, what are the common factors that are underlying all of these.
Got it.
And so certainly there are cases where people who have been drone struck have gone on to do some sort of suicide attack. Probably that's the case. But what he's saying is that the stronger correlation is with a nationalism thing that is happening. And then he gives a couple of examples that I can't remember from completely atheistic communities that respond to foreign invaders with, this is what's going to happen. And he says it has more to do with a sense of defilement of the homeland, like these invaders are in, and that's the response. So I thought that was interesting. I don't know if you have any reaction to that. It may or may not. You have to check the primary source.
Well, the only thing, so it's not related to that data, but I do remember watching Rogue One, the Star Wars movie, and really thinking that America wouldn't be the good guys, which was really weird for me because I am in our culture. I grew up, I thought America was the good guys, and we're policing the bad guys of the world, you know, a black and white world that a child lives in. And I was watching this movie about these people who are interfering in other governments and have the massive military advantage against this small team of victims to this empire who are using suicide bombing to try to disrupt the defense of the big guy for an instant to give their other teammates a chance.
Yeah.
And I went, ooh, this is hard to watch as an American.
Yeah, which one are we? Are we the technologically advanced?
We're definitely the evil empire in this. And I was watching, you couldn't make a movie that was more propaganda-y in the name of overthrowing America than that movie, if you tried.
Yeah, it's strange because they go on a suicide mission to stop the evil empire.
Just to weaken our defenses. Just to open up a hole for someone else.
Yeah.
To then go and do more damage against
and it's
the
romanticized
empire.
and
I was watching this like if I had to make a movie that was to teach people to try to overthrow the US, it'd look exactly like this.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting in a US movie theater watching it with a bunch of Americans going, woo, when they blow up the Empire's shield.
Yeah.
And I just went, do you guys know which one we are? Why are we wooing?
It's interesting that there's always, because I just started some video game. This big dark empire is such a trope in all of these movies. It's literally in this game that I'm playing, and I was like, how did they get all this technology? How did they what's going on here? Are these like perfectly powerful guys that and just ragtag band of rebels got to come in and do the one thing that they can? There's something.
Well, the bigger lesson for me is the empire thinks they're the good guys.
Yeah, of course.
The Mongols thought they were the good guys. Everybody thinks they're the good guys.
Yes.
On all sides of war.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that the empire can't be the good guy, right? It does. It. Who knows? You would have to.
No, having the military advantage doesn't make you the bad guy.
Sure. I think
the truth is there are, in most cases, no bad guys. Just people with different opinions.
Yeah, I think that's tough, and because then you want to have some yardstick by which to, and we've talked about moral relativity, by which to measure things. And
well,
everybody
I think it really depends on when you start measuring for a lot of these wars.
Yeah.
I think if you go, well, we did this because of this.
Let's look at World War II from 1939 to 1945. Who's the bad guy? You go Germany. Okay, well, let's look at World War II from 1920 to 1935. It's like we put pretty draconian measures.
Yeah, still Germany because I'm Jewish, but go on.
But you get the idea, meaning because they weren't doing it up until 39. We were putting these draconian measures on their economy. Who's the bad guy for those 15 years?
Yeah.
So I see what you're saying. Yeah, on a long enough timeline.
And then you go, why were those happening? Because of World War I.
Yeah,
so you go back to World War I, but what caused World War I? I don't know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think a lot of times when you measure from will determine who you think is the protagonist.
Sure. That's an interesting thought, and I guess the goal is to, I think, take as far out of a view as you possibly can.
Well, if you do a lot of time, not all the time, there are horrible things happening in the world that are just evil. In a lot of cases, the majority, I'd say, if you zoom out far enough, you realize there aren't necessarily any bad guys. There's just people acting self-interested, and then reactions from other people acting self-interested
and ignorance,
and then they escalate.
You
know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think this is one of the scary things is that you can evil fades when you zoom out and you get that far, and that's a scary thing because when you're zoomed in and you see someone who harms a child or who does something terrible, you want there to be evil to explain that. What's scarier is to zoom out and see the abuse that occurred in that person's life.
Well, we could go. So yeah, this is. We'll take it more personal, less political, less philosophical. So there's these personal development things that you and I like to go to, Landmark, Choice Center, whatever it is. I heard a story of a woman who went to one. She was molested as a child, and they said, you have to forgive this person if you want to move on. She's like, I'm absolutely not. This is an evil, evil person. And then throughout the course of the program, I don't know how, it's very impressive to me, got to the point where she could forgive this person, went and actually confronted them and talked to them, said, I don't want to have any relationship with you, but I do forgive you. And through the course of this, it turns out, that person was horribly abused.
Yep.
And their abuse is not forgivable, but it comes from a mental illness that they received because when they were 6, they were abused. And that doesn't make their actions good. It doesn't. Their actions are still bad. But you also do understand that it comes from a place of mental illness that was inflicted on them by abuse. And so, it's just interesting because in some cases people are evil, but in some cases you just don't understand their story. Yeah.
I think almost the only possible break to that I can think of, and I think that's true of all cases, because even if you go, okay, he's not mentally ill, you're going to find a life circumstance that created that, because we all come out of our life circumstances. The one thing that is strange is when you hear about psychopathy, when you hear about, because this kind of breaks the model. So you hear of these Jeffrey Dahmers who,
but that's what I'm saying is they can't help it either.
Oh, well, I don't even think evil might be the appropriate word, but it's like, this is almost like a death robot. Like, this was a 7-year-old kid who was burning and skinning animals.
That's what I'm saying. No, Ted Bundy's movie, what Ted Bundy did is awful, awful, awful. I almost want to use the term inexcusable, but I'm not sure if that is hypocritical to what I'm about to say, which is he also, it wasn't controllable, I don't think, for him, because it spun out of control. He just wanted to, I think, have a life, but couldn't stop it. And it just spiraled out of control. And his victims deserve to hate him if they want to, and it's inexcusable what he did. But if you were born with his brain, you would have done it too. That's the interesting part. If you were born with his brain in your body, you would have been a passenger as your body did those murders too.
I think this is why I don't believe in free will, because you could just sub out Ted Bundy's brain for my brain or your brain or anybody's.
No, I told you, to the other people, I apply the lack of free will. I told you this. I'll make it short. I got held up at gunpoint by a 15-year-old in Brazil. I don't hate the kid for it. He was born into poverty. He saw me. He saw spoiled, wealthy tourist or whatever, and this is how he survives. And if we were switched and I was a 15-year-old born into a favela, and this was how everyone around me told me I had to survive, I would choose to survive too. I wouldn't starve to death. And so I don't hate the person for it. I don't think he had a choice. I just apply free will to myself because even if it's fake, it's an empowering belief that allows me to be successful and happy.
Got it. Okay. But with other people, you go, and put my brain there, put his brain there.
Well, if I had don't even swap our bodies. If you just took me as an infant, put me in a favela in Brazil, but convinced them for some reason to ignore my skin color.
With your genetics, you would probably still do the same thing.
I'm 15. I'm not a straight A student getting ready to go to a good college.
Yeah.
That would be remarkable.
Yeah.
This is how they tell you to survive. This is the people you admire, your family, your friends. This is what they're doing. Not to say that some people can't get out, but I don't think that I'm such a remarkable hero that I wouldn't be doing exactly what everybody does to survive in that instance.
And then this is the other thing, and this is kind of why I like Eastern stuff, because it does have an answer for a lot of this. You're even talking about that I'm such a remarkable hero. It breaks down identity. It goes, this concept of you as this self-determining center of an otherwise causal universe is just madness. You're just a piece of a machine that is all moving, and you happen to have a radar antenna on this one piece, so you're conscious of the precision of its movements.
No, true, but truly, I had no malice to that kid. I had more malice when some drunk middle-class white guy broke my nose in a parking lot because he wasn't born in a favela. You know what I mean?
And this is the tough
His dad probably abused him or something. Yeah, when you
don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's just easier for me to empathize with the favela kid, with the 15-year-old born into poverty. I'm like, I get it. And I'm sure that the guy whose first reaction to getting drunk is to sucker punch someone probably had an abusive dad or something going on in his life that made him that way. But it's harder for me not to be like,
well, it's no fun. It's no fun to give up righteous anger. I love righteous anger. You know,
it's a great drug.
It's my favorite. So anyway, righteous anger, tough to give up. The last thing that made me think of that I wanted to come back to was, I think it's interesting. I've had a reversal on forgiveness. And I think it's interesting that they say you have to forgive, because I felt that way at one point, but my new stance is not. It's very much that forgiveness either happens or it doesn't. And you want to lay the groundwork to allow forgiveness to happen. And it's kind of like you can't make enlightenment happen. You can just sit still for long enough. But I think when you try to force forgiveness, you can mess it up.
We talked about this on the podcast, so this is already out there in the world. But you had something happen to you as a kid.
Yeah.
Have you forgiven that person? Where do you stand emotionally and mentally?
I haven't spoken to them. I mean, for the background, we talked about I was molested as a kid. But How do I stand? I think the story will be complete when I talk to them, and I'm putting it off. I don't.
Do you have a desire to, an aversion to?
Definitely an aversion. It's not going to be fun. It's not a thing I look forward to, but I definitely can look at that story at least rationally and go, this is a cycle. This is not an evil entity acting in an otherwise perfect world. This is somebody who had difficulties and didn't know how to handle them.
Yeah, they got it worse at that age, and so then they passed it on to you.
Yeah, so I don't know how...
We talked about, like, the goal in life is just to create less trauma than you received. Yeah. And if everyone does that, we'll be in a better place.
Moving in the right direction. Yeah. So that's that. And then the last little thing that I had written here from that book as well that I thought was interesting.
Righteous Mind?
Yes, Righteous Mind, is that they do a segment on interviewing the beliefs of conservatives and liberals to find out what moral values underpin their stances. Mm-hmm. So, and they find that liberals tend to be very high in the care dimension, which means that they want...
We talked about this.
Yes, exactly. And that just given the background, that conservatives tend to want purity, tradition, authority, as well as care. They're more evenly balanced amongst other values. What was interesting is that they asked, okay, how do you think a conservative would fill this out? How do you think a liberal would fill this out to people who are on opposite side of the spectrum? Huh. What do you think happened?
Okay, so what are the options? Help me understand what the...
So I'll give you a couple of things. So you got it completely wrong. They said that these guys are devils, right?
Sure, of course.
Each side did it. What is the other option? That they got it exactly right, that one side got it right and one side got it wrong. Those are sort of the rough...
Oh, that the other side are idiots. That's what I think they filled out.
Okay, so what they filled out, here's what happened. Generally, moderates were able to get conservatives and liberals right. Conservatives were able to accurately identify the beliefs of liberals. Liberals were not able to accurately identify the beliefs of conservatives.
Oh, interesting.
Which underlies, I think, the general idiom that liberals think conservatives are heartless, and conservatives think liberals are stupid.
Yes.
And it was just, I think, interesting data that even when they were trying...
Because the conservatives can tell you what a liberal thinks, but they just think the liberal is an idiot for thinking it.
They think it's inappropriate for whatever reason for them to hold those
But they
beliefs.
Understand that that's what they think. And the liberals...
At a higher degree than,
think the conservatives are just monsters.
They thought that they wouldn't care about harm. They thought that they didn't care. So because conservatives have, essentially what this argues is that liberals really care about harm. And in every situation, they're trying to reduce harm. And that's the driving thrust of it. Conservatives are balancing that with other things like loyalty, like authority, like the traditional stuff comes important as well. So they have a balancing act, and depending on the situation, one might take precedence over the other. From a liberal perspective, they do not care at all about harm. They don't see that there's just a countervailing weight. Yes. So when they give him it as, will a conservative care about the harm of a small animal? Like, no. And this isn't every person, obviously, but that's an example of the type of thing that they would get wrong. And I think it's interesting. And I do think, generally speaking, that both sides ascribe malice to the other, where differing beliefs would explain so much more easily what's happening.
That's the Louis C.K., right? Like on abortion.
Yeah.
It's either murdering a baby or taking a poop.
Yep.
Isn't that his thing?
Yeah. He says, listen, depending on what you think this is, it's either a non-issue or we're encouraging genocide. So
that's going to inform. You're going to have a different reaction to
exactly.
To laws about that.
And it's that the idea that your perception of the world could influence two starkly different beliefs, which could be entirely morally consistent within themselves based on a simple perceptual difference, is strange for most people to think, but it is the case. So that's all that I had written down. I don't know if you have anything else.
Yeah, man, I'm going to ground us. I feel like we've been way up in the air. Yeah. So I want to talk to you about our buddy.
Okay.
So, and I want to bring this up because I think a lot of people will identify with it in some regard. Mm-hmm. So we have a friend, and he would very much like to hang out with us more than we seem to want to hang out with him. But the way that he goes about trying to hang out is off-putting. Mm-hmm. So instead of just saying, hey, what's up? Are you guys around sometime this week to get lunch? He'll give a really short time window of like, hey, let's get food right now. Or he'll be like, hey, let's get food right now, and you have to do it because XYZ. And there'll be these
weird commands,
expectant, commanding things. But at a higher level, I think that the question is, what do you do if you are someone in that situation who would like to hang out with their friends more, or who would like their friends
to be more
to want to hang out with them more? So I'm friends with these people, and they don't seem to want to spend time with me. They would say I'm their friend. I would say they're my friend.
Yeah.
But they don't seem to want to actually spend time with me, at least not to the amount that I would like to be included or invited.
Got it.
What do I do? How do I get invited? How do I become the person that people want to spend time with?
Well, so I think it's how did it get bad in the first place? And I can give you the example from what we're talking about here is that this was actually someone who I would have, even with the command in the past, been like, yeah, sure, like I'll do it because the interactions were good. And
I went out of my way to hang out with this person.
Yes. And what happened, and it was over a period of weeks and even months, is that the interactions became not good.
Yeah.
He was...
Well, I think this is important to touch on. So he would come into interactions just thinking about what he needed to get from them.
Yes.
To vent, to be listened to get advice on his problems, right? He would always go into the interactions with what do I need right now?
Yeah.
With no thought to, is this enjoyable for these people? Am I cultivating this relationship? And so he took all the goodwill and just burned it down.
Yeah. And this is interesting because what's weird is advice actually can be can raise all boats because he's getting what he needs and I feel important. But the way to really ruin taking advice, and I've done this in the past, is to go ask for tons of advice and apply none of it.
Yeah. And then come back with the same problem.
Come back with the same problem.
And ask for advice again.
And ask for more advice.
Yep.
And that is a really quick way to create learned helplessness in your friends to the point where they just go, I don't care. I'm just going to lay here and not even respond. And speaking to you seems to be valueless.
Yeah.
Because it's not fun what we're talking about. It is directed to change the world, and then nothing changes.
Sure. And it would be fun if the next time we talked, you told me about how that advice was going.
So that could have been all could have been avoided just by taking the advice.
That's
it
interesting.
Wouldn't have been
I hadn't thought of that. My take was kind of high level, was just that if you want people to hang out with you more, make it enjoyable when they're spending time with you.
Yes.
In some way, shape, or form.
Yes. And so given that a lot of the goodwill had been burned down, and now for the gut reaction when I have is an expectation that it's going to be a not fun time.
Yep.
Just like a -1, on a scale of -10 to 10, just mildly,
not terrible, just worse.
Just slightly worse than not. Then I have an aversion to going. And so when you compound that with a command to show up, now I have a double aversion to going. So I would say what you people need to do is to figure out how to take that -1 and make it a +1 at least, or a +3 or a +4. And so for a time being, it would be, hey man, would love to hang out sometime. Hope you're doing well. Would you be down to go on Tuesday or Wednesday to grab some dinner? Now, that does a couple of different things other than, hey, man, I'm in your area right now. Don't say you can't make it. It says, oh, I feel special because he wants me to come. I have flexibility around the time, and it's all in the future, so I don't have to. It's not going to ruin my
short-term
schedule,
plans,
my short-term plans. And I would say, let's Wednesday 6:30, and I'd be on the calendar, and it would happen.
Yeah,
that's the truth. So what can you do to make it interesting? Tell them that you would love to see them, give them the flexibility of time, create an event or a thing that they would love to go to.
That's what I was going to say. Pick something they like to do.
Exactly.
Invite them to go surfing or go to an escape room.
The restaurant they love, the escape room. That's if he invited me to an event, for instance, we've been playing Borderlands 3. If he's like, dudes, I got Borderlands 3, then I'll be your...
Or if he just picked a restaurant.
Yeah.
I know there's a restaurant that you like we don't go to often. If you just said, hey, let's go there. But what he normally says is, let's go to my favorite restaurant.
Yes. And it's very easy, I think, to think of ways to push it back in the other direction, which is kindness in the request, flexibility in the request, thinking of something they'd like to do in that. It could be a party, ice skating rink, whatever it is that individual
whatever
likes.
they like.
And in that, then you get there, then you need the quality of your time together to push from -1 back into the positive realm. And you do that with all the things we talk about on the channel. Positive, smile. If you ask for advice, take it, apply it, let them know. That would, within a fairly short time span, make it so you could send me an abrupt text. Be like, yo, I'm here right now. Let's go. And I'd be like, it's worth it.
Funny enough, now that we're talking about it, I actually think that the subject of the conversation could stay exactly the same if there was more smiling, laughing, and enthusiasm.
Yeah.
If everything topic-wise was the same, but he was smiling, laughing, making jokes, and being enthusiastic when we were telling him, here's what we would do, I actually think we would want to spend time with this person.
If we even just laughed at the fact that he's not doing anything we said,
Sure.
and it became a running joke where he poked fun at himself and it made me laugh, yeah, I probably would have a different thing. It's just somber, and the advice isn't being taken, and it's hey, show up right now.
And I think that's applicable to everyone, actually.
Yes.
I think in general, one, if you want people to want to spend time with you, just try to make them enjoy your time together, which I think people often get confused by why people don't want to see them, and they don't reflect on, I wonder how that person felt the last time we hung out. Did I raise their mood? And then the second thing I think is interesting is it doesn't take much to do that. It actually does just take some smiling, some enthusiasm, jokes, laughing at their jokes, while talking mostly about the thing you want to talk about.
You want to talk about it.
That's interesting. It's not a seismic shift.
No. You weirdly enough have to get everything wrong for me to not want to hang out with you, and you only have to get a few things right for me to want to. Especially once we've established that we have. This was someone that I didn't know 2 years ago, and we hung out once, and I liked it, and then and I liked it, and I liked it, and then we kept hanging out and kept making plans, and it's unfortunate that the goodwill has been burned, and
I see the comment a lot.
If this is
I see the comment a lot. I see the email, the comment, the whatever, of how do I make more friends, and how do I make my friends want to hang out with me more? It's actually a really common question we get. So that's why I thought it'd be cool to talk about.
Hopefully that helps. And I guess the one last thing that I would say is if he were to ask this question, he would frame it incorrectly. He would say, my friends are lazy. They never want to do anything.
Yeah.
And so if that's you, and that's how you're framing your question, that your friends are lazy, never want to do fun stuff, consider that that's not the case. Consider that it's the way that you've been, and then take our advice, because he would have seen this question and thought it didn't apply to him.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
So
yeah, if you're not spending as much time with your friends as you'd like, pause and play an experiment.
Yeah.
What if this isn't their fault? It's my fault.
Sure.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Cool. Podcast number 20.
Boom.
In the book. Sorry for a short one. Ben has to get on call, but we love you guys, and we'll see you next week. Peace.